Hello everybody, this is Lehman Crafton, aka Zorvalachan, Less Than Guru, with my second part to my Torg original review. And I've realized that I'm going to have to do it even differently than what I thought. When I first wanted to do this, I wanted to add everything together, just do one big Torg huge review. It ended up being about 3 hours, and I accidentally did not realize that I had a face frame blue box around my face the entire time. So after thinking about it and thinking maybe 3 hours was a little too long to subject you to, I didn't want Torg, which is one of my favorite role-playing games. It's in my top one, and I say my top one because every now and then I might have a new top one, but Torg is often my top one game that I absolutely love. I absolutely enjoy game mastering and playing Torg, although I game master 99% of the time. That's probably even an underestimate. I played back at the very beginning, and then I've maybe had 3 or 4 sessions since then as an actual player. But I love Torg, and I want to do this setting. I said my part 2 is going to be setting, but I want to do a deep dive into the various realms of the game, the various cosms and realities. And when I did this video, when I was done, or near done, I looked up at the little timer, and it was actually over 2 hours. And I thought, wow, I did not expect it to be 2 hours. So I could have just published that. I could have just put a intro on and spent the time to upload it. But I was hungry. I had done it for 2 hours, and I hadn't had breakfast yet, and it was 1 o'clock, and I decided to go eat. Or do carry out and bring it home, sushi. And during that time, I thought maybe I should break these up. Maybe I should break these up into the general setting, which I did at the beginning, and then do specific realities and cosms after that, and then maybe a kind of a wrap up if I don't get points that I wanted to hit upon during the individual ones, because I was just going to do timestamps, but I thought even with timestamps that might be a little too long. So my revised schedule will be, I had part 1, which was my history of Torg, and now I'm going to have a series of part 2. So this will be part 2A, and part 2B will be the first reality of Torg, which would be the living land. So that's basically where I'm going with that. So this here, part A, will be a general kind of Torg lore, Torg cosmology, you might say, how different game masters actually fit into the Torg experience as canon, and what, as I think I explained in my previous video, my feelings of the difference between canon and official. And I don't know if anybody else uses those terms, but that's the way I see it. If it's written in the book that all of these separate game masters' games are valid and exist within it, then that's canon. And if it says that old Torg existed and happened, and new Torg exists and is happening, then they're both canon. It's in the writing, it's the way the lore was written. So I'm not going to get into nitpicky details, but there might be some things that might, if you get into the actual Torg book, and if you find and read some of the novels, there might be things that I say that are slightly wrong, and that because I'm going off of memory, and a lot of these books, especially like the novels, I haven't read in years. So some of my information might have degraded, or some of my own thoughts about my own personal canon might be a little bit different. And but that's okay, because actually in Torg it's canon, and you can be completely something different and still say, but I'm playing canon, because that's just how Torg sets it up. And that's something that's like so refreshing. I've never had a problem with changing things, but I know there are a lot of game masters out there and players who they want to play canon. I mean, when I read forums and stuff, they're like, yeah, but what's canon? What's canon? And in here, it literally, it's not just a game master fiat saying, oh, game masters, if you don't like the rule, change the rules. Because I've always felt that while that should be obvious, that it's kind of also saying, we don't know if our rules are any good, so if you find that a rule suck, it's up to you to make the rules better. I know that's not exactly it, but that's kind of how a lot of times things like that come across to me. Like, if you don't like it, change it. Nah. But Torg actually has it as part of the lore. I mean, imagine a D&D having it in the lore that if your Forgotten Realms was different than somebody else's Forgotten Realms, you're both equally valid. There is no right way, no right Forgotten Realms. And that's just, like, to me awesome. So I'm going to go kind of like as if you don't have any experience in Torg. Because even if you do have done Torg Eternity, some of the lore is a little bit different. Some of the way things work different, and they're both canon. So I'm going to try to mainly focus on original Torg. And then, like I said, I'll be doing each individual reality. I'll call them realities, and I'll explain in this video why I'm calling them realities. I'll explain the individual realities. And then I will maybe do a wrap-up and some of my own thoughts about the whole Torgness. So, Torg takes place on Core Earth. It's called Core Earth. It's like our Earth. It probably might be our Earth. But it's a little more cinematic. And I say cinematic, I don't say heroic, for a reason. Other Game Masters Cosm verses might be heroic, and that's fine. And that's something that I've debated a lot of people on, because they say Torg as a game is heroic, and I will say no, it's not. It's cinematic, and there's a difference. Torg is a multi-genre game. It is the only multi-genre game with the same base rules that I found that work well together and don't fall apart at some point. And it's not like I've played every single role-playing game out there. There might be other ones that if I've played them, if I would play them, that I might think the same way. But I have done GURPS a little bit, Universal Role-Playing System, Rifts, along with not just Rifts as a multi-genre type campaign world, but crossing it with anything from Palladium Fantasy to Heroes Unlimited to Robotech. Lots of mix and matches I've done. And they can be fine for short term, but I find on long term they tend to break down. There tends to be a obvious power gap between things. And it's not necessarily between the different genres, but Rifts, as an example, Magic has a lot of things that are very, very short-ranged, like spells that, Fire Blast or Energy Beam type spells will be very, very short-ranged, and tech stuff will have ranges of miles. So if you set up things tech-wise, you can pick off things before they even get to you. Now, I know a lot of game masters always start, you can see your foe, and they can see you, and then you engage into melee, but if you really read the book, certain things fall apart damage-wise and certain things like that. Also, the power levels are a little weird, where a lot of hardcore Palladium fans, which I was once one of them, get into Palladium can do no wrong, and if you're having problems, it's your fault as a game master, and it's not the system's fault. And I won't say that it's absolutely Palladium, Rifts is completely out there. Why I'm talking about Rifts is the other kind of multi-genre where you have magics and robots and cyberware and psionics and everything thrown in as Torg. You have certain things which it's very difficult for a game master to challenge the whole party without specifically going, okay, here's the big PC, so I must have the big NPC go against it. And here's a much weaker PC, and so I must have a much weaker NPC go against them. Because if I do it like this, or if I do it like this, then one or the other is going to be completely destroyed, and it throws off, I'm either going to kill a PC character off very easy, or I'm providing no challenge at all to the powerful PC. Torg is one that it tightens the reins in a little bit, but it keeps, it keeps the flavor of the multi-genre. Sorry, I'm going to drink. With my nice little Ulysses Online Con 2020 that I was part of. Hopefully that helped. Torg is a game that did it well and close to perfectly. I do not believe anything is perfect, so I won't say it's perfect. Now, I have debated somebody who says that Torg is perfect. I think it's their personal opinion. They say it's objectively perfect. I disagree with that, and we would just be spinning around forever on the forums. So I just kind of bowed out of that conversation, because when somebody takes an absolute with rose-colored glasses and telling me they're not rose-colored glasses, then that's a different thing. But Torg is very close to being perfect in its balance play-wise. Now, I think I've mentioned in the first video, objectively, if you took a elven dragon rider and put it up against a Neanderthal primitive, the elven dragon rider is going to win. They're going to have a dragon. You just put them together. So that way, objectively, no, the character templates, there were no character classes in Torg. There were character concepts, and to make it easy for players and game masters, each of the books had many character templates. They called them templates in Torg Eternity. They call kind of the similar thing archetypes. But I will use the word template because that's what they were called in Torg, the original Torg. So there would be various templates, and all the templates weren't equal, but all the templates could contribute well to any situation. So while you might have that Neanderthal fighting the Dragon Rider, and the Dragon Rider is always going to win, when they are teamed up as a team against something, the Neanderthal is not going to feel like their character is a waste at all. They're going to have plenty of options and things that they're going to be able to do, and a lot of that's going to be brought up when I do the mechanics of the game. So that was something that I've always appreciated as a game master, that I never had to think, okay, if they're doing this, maybe I need to limit and not allow this, or maybe I should do this and not allow that. And I'm talking about the templates. In a future part of the Torg review, I'll be talking about options that they used, and I never went with the options because for me, that opened up cans of worms that you might get into those type of things where the game master really has to look at what's going on. What is my player? What's the ultimate goal of my player? Is my ultimate goal of my player for a character concept, or are they just trying to come up with justifications of why they want to be super powerful? And the templates, even though you did have one that had a dragon rider, it was able to work. You could just say, okay, then you just get what's on this template. All your equipment, that's what you get. You don't get any, there's no arguing. And also, if a game master thought a template or two was OP, they could just nix it. They could just say, okay, you can do everything except for A, B, C, D. Those are the 3 or 4 or 10 or how many ever that I don't allow. And when I first started at Purdue and was playing, the game master had a Space Gods book, and we looked through that, but he said the Space Gods hadn't landed, so we couldn't play any of the Space Gods character or templates, but there were templates for other realms, so that's where the guy who played the Knight Templar picked up that character. That character template was in the Space Gods. It was a Cyber People character. It was pretty cool character. He had played a Hospitaller. He saw the other one liked it better and asked the Game Master, and Game Master allowed him to switch out. So, the setting of Torg, multi-genre, cinematic, not heroic. And I'll explain that at some point, either in this first video or at the very, very end video. I haven't decided yet. But it is cinematic, meaning the structure of adventures are divided into scenes and acts. So you have a whole adventure, and whether it's like an episode you play today and you stop today and that's the end of the adventure, that could be an act with various scenes. Or you could have a string of them together and it would be a long adventure with multiple acts, and within those acts are multiple scenes. And a scene was always described very loosely, so it wasn't like a half hour or an hour. It was always a similar time and place. So if we go into a house as a group of Storm Knights and we go into the house, around that time, as long as we're kind of doing the same thing of what maybe we're investigating, we're trying to find clues, so the whole time we're trying to find clues and investigating, that house is a scene. We leave the house and maybe we go next door. If we're still doing the same investigation type thing for the same reason, then the scene, it would be the same scene. Now, if we found everything in the house and that told us we needed to go next door, and next door we were going to do something else that was not involved with the like searching and stuff, then it possibly could be another scene after that. So it was always kind of like the same reason, the same time, the same place-ish. Or say that we go and we're investigating something and it takes more than an hour or two. Maybe we get there, we start doing stuff, and then we have to spend the night and we wake up, or who knows, maybe it's like a whole week-long investigation. That whole thing could be one scene because you're kind of doing the same thing, but it's a relative same time and place. Once you get beyond, I said a week there, but really once you get beyond a few hours, or at least a day or two, then it probably would go to the next scene. But the act was kind of like a short story arc. And then if you had something big, a big adventure with multiple acts, then they all kind of led up to the same, or they kind of led act to act to act. And it was very reminiscent of, for me, TV shows. So you could have those episodes which have no connection, like a Star Trek episode that would have no connection to what happened before and what happened after. There was no kind of references. Maybe there would be kind of like maybe a little in-joke or a little reference, but if they found a super cool thing and figured it out here, it didn't mean that they actually might have had it here for whatever reason. But with Torg, with the acts and scenes, if you had an act, you could possibly get that act done in a night, and a session, game session, and then that would be the end, and that would be your episode. And then the next episode you're doing something completely different. Or you can have an adventure of episodes. That would be kind of like when you have TV series that actually progress a plot along. Or you could have the ones where you're progressing the plot along, but every once in a while you have one of those completely independent episodes in it. So Torg was always kind of set up like that, and normally in an act, normal, all the scenes except for the last one was considered a standard scene. Standard scene, usually the metaphorical deck and physical deck was stacked for the player characters, so the player characters had the edge. And then on the dramatic ones, it either were equal or even the villains were a little bit above the player characters. So it was harder to do. It was dramatic. It brought the drama. So that's why I call it cinematic. Now, even though there are heroes, the player characters are assumed to be heroes, and even on the card it says H for heroes, and then there's a V for villains, and the NPCs are villains, or villains, then why is it not a heroic game? And that's because of the realities within it, the multi-genre aspect of it. And you can be heroes. The Storm Knights are supposed to be heroes. They're not supposed to be villains. Torg is not a game that's like D&D, which says, well, the base assumption is you're heroes, but you can play villain campaigns. And it would be kind of pretty hard to play a villain campaign in Torg. I guess you could have the NPCs then be the heroes. But it would be hard to, you really couldn't do a villain versus villains type game in Torg, which is fine. Torg is one of also the few ones that I don't change the premise of the setting. I don't make my own world up for it. It takes place on Earth and Core Earth, and I make a Core Earth, and it's a little bit different than old Torg Core Earth or Torg Eternity Core Earth, but it's Earth, so I don't use like Neptune or Kryn or Forgotten Realms world or Mystar. I don't use any other of those worlds. I use Earth. So to me, it's cinematic. It has that movie or TV episode flavor to it. But just like movies have different genres, and if you go into a Marvel superhero movie, you have kind of a set thing of how that's probably going to happen. If you go to a horror movie like Nightmare on Elm Street or Cabin in the Woods, you have a completely different mindset. They're both cinematic, but they're different genres, and you have different expectations. And that's how I see the realities of Torg. Torg is not heroic in itself. It allows heroes. And when a hero from a Indiana Jones or Marvel universe goes into Cabin of the Woods, it's not that the Cabin of the Woods monsters went into Marvel Universe, so Marvel Universe people can be all, heroic and the whole world set up against these monsters. No, they are going into the realm of the horror monsters. So they could have all their superpowers and stuff, but when they go there, they're abiding by the reality of that horror genre. So they might not be as good as they expect to be. And I'll explain that later when I get into the different realities. But so what do we have so far? We have Torg, takes place on Earth, Core Earth. It is multi-genre and cinematic. So what is the premise of Torg? Why? What is the backstory? What are we doing? So the whole concept goes back to there is in the beginning. There is the void and eternity. The void is destruction, eternity is creation. And while eternity is creating things, the void is destroying it. And from them come two kind of supreme being type things, but they're so beyond our understanding. We might try to give them human characteristics, but they're kind of beyond knowledge, beyond our concept. And on the eternity side, you have Apiros, and on the void side is the nameless one. And they're ones with more of consciousness. They're the ones who kind of can do thinking, even though it's beyond the way that we would think. And the Apiros made the Cosmverse, made a universe type thing with different cosms, different realities within it. And the nameless one, being a child, I guess you could say, of the void, it wanted to destroy this Cosmverse. And Apiros realized that this might happen. So it used its creativity to take that Cosmverse and mirror it to infinity. So each of these cosm verses is different, and ones that are close kind of, it might be one person walked left one day instead of right. But when you get beyond here, then you might have things where different countries came to beings at different times. During, this one, the Roman Empire lasted. This one here, the Roman Empire fell a lot earlier than it should have. You have like even things further out, which they're not even Earth type places. They're just completely different, but they all encompass each of these type things. Each of these cosm verses has all of these realities with these different Earths and these different places that aren't Earth, and they're different, but they're all part of this whole now called the Infiniverse, and that's where the name Infiniverse comes. So it's an infinite amount of cosm verses. Now, the cool thing that I love, that I said every Game Master is canon, is because each of these cosm verses is what each individual Game Master has. So it's written into lore. They actually, apparently, I didn't know this until very, very recently. Apparently, if you did the Infiniverse officially, which if you remember my big book, the Infiniverse, as they published, kind of like a newsletter, would go out, and the people that participated in those surveys, they were given a number, like your Cosmverse is number 42. So that actually blew my mind. I'm like, that's really cool, because that really shows how canon it is. You exist in this world. You even got a number, kind of like the different Earths of either DC or Marvel. And I never was able to participate in it, but I don't have a number, but my Cosmverse is in there. The new Torg Eternity, it's in there. The old Torg, the original Torg, it's in there. My game mastering world is in there. That guy who was 42, he's in there. One of my players who then started game mastering on his own with Torg, he's in there. And it doesn't matter what lefts or rights we've done, how far we've diverged, we're all canon. But in that whole thing, when you have Apiros and the Nameless One, Apiros made the Infiniverse, figuring he might destroy one Cosmverse, and he might destroy a lot of them, but if I make an infinite amount, he's never going to catch up. And the stories that the Game Master tells are on one of these Cosmverses. And yes, if a Game Master stopped the campaign and completely was like, okay, it's the end, starting again, well then he's just starting at a different one of the infinite different Cosmverses. So he might have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or however many Cosmverses. I've had one. It's gone through some changes, but my Cosmverse is one. Or you could even maybe say they're right next to each other with the little change, just put it right off. Whatever. It's all canon. It's all great. So you have this creativity and this destruction. So from Apiros and the Nameless One, you even go another step closer to us. And basically things that give hope, things that, and we're talking hope is a good thing here. There's a great philosophy in Greek about Pandora's box, or the jar originally, and that hope is actually bad. Hope is like the worst thing, because if you know the myth, Pandora's box or jar, when it's all the horror, bad things, disease, bad plagues of the world came out, and she closed it, and inside was hope, and hope convinced her finally to let it out, and then gave people hope, and everybody thinks it's a good thing. And it's like, well, no, all the bad things were in there, so maybe hope's a bad thing. Maybe hope keeps you going when you shouldn't be going. Maybe you should just give up and let whatever happens, but you continue to crawl for that oasis in the desert, and you put yourself through even more misery, and you still don't make it to the oasis. So that's an interesting concept. But we have that type of thing we'll use hope as a good way with Torg, through storytelling, getting the imaginations and creativity of people filling them with what is known as possibility energy. Possibility energy is an energy. It is something that is kind of like the force, where it's within everybody, but we all have a minuscule amount of it, and it's a teeny weeny bit that we can't even use. It's just kind of in us. But when you have not just me with my little bit of possibility energy, but you have the 7.7 billion people of the world each having that little bit, then it adds up to a tremendous amount. And each sentient being basically has this energy within them. And that is something that is power. And the Apiros can take certain things that have significance within that culture and turn them into items of power. And this would be called eternity shards. And they could be everything from, say, the Liberty Bell, something that has great significance to American history, all the way to, say, like if there was a historic King Arthur, that Excalibur might be an eternity shard. And the original Torg, they have Coyote, the Native American deity. The heart of Coyote was a eternity shard, and things like that. So, but there were lots of them, and they were based off of myths and legends of various peoples and various cosmos, realities. And then on the other side, you had the Nameless One, and from him came these devices of darkness called darkness devices of destruction. And they also had sentience. And the Eternity Shards really didn't, but they formed and they had a meaning that was attached to them. Like, they could only be used efficiently for certain reasons, to help their reality, to help what they symbolized. Whereas the darkness devices, there were fewer of them, but they were very powerful. And what they were able to do is take the possibility energy from the cosmos and from the eternity shards, and then they were able to take that energy and shape reality into some type of destructive force. The problem is even though they were sentient, they really, being part of destruction, did not have creativity. So they had to link with some mortal or immortal, some being, and that being then could set goals, could set plans of conquest, and linked to that darkness device, they formed something between a symbiotic and a parasitic relationship, because sometimes they worked well together, sometimes they did not work well together. And then they could go to various other realities, different cosmos, invade, and suck all that possibility energy. And what they would do with this power is they would send agents to another cosmos. And those agents there that were sent there would kind of try to prepare the local populace. So if you want to think of like maybe different dimensions, you go from one dimension to the other one, or different realities, they're called cosmos in Torg. They're different sets of realities. And some of them could be as big as, like, core Earth is our whole universe that we believe and think in, and we can look in telescopes and, try to figure out that whole thing. That would be one huge cosm with Earth. And over here, outside of that, our reality, outside of our cosm, is a different cosm. And maybe it's Earth-like, but they believe in a flat Earth. They believe that the Earth is the center of the universe. They believe that the planets are smaller and just like go around the Earth. That reality fits with them. So it might not be as big, but it might be powerful. and there might be, there's people there, but it is that cosmology, that reality. It transcends what we believe is real and what's not real. What they believe in, what's real and what they can observe, it can be completely different. It's valid there. Our stuff's valid here. And when the two meet, there is an Everlaw. There's various Everlaws. And the Everlaw of one states that at the same place, at the same time, there can only be one reality. So when they meet, there's a fight over who's a metaphorical fight, over who's going to be the predominant reality. So when you have a High Lord with his darkness device and he crosses over from his cosm, the source of his reality with his rules, and comes over to a new reality, a new cosm, and tries to impose his self on that, because he knows his rules, he knows what he's doing. If he can mess up the other people by them not understanding what's going on, oh, how much better. So he sends some agents over, and they try to get people to believe, because belief has a lot of things to do in Torg, getting the cosm ready, getting them able to accept this new cosm coming in. And what happens is, if you each person has that little bit of possibility energy in them, and once you realize that this happened and you kind of accept it, you have that possibility energy kind of is sucked away. You lose all the future choices you might have had. They're sucked away. Now, it's not like it's sucking your soul out and you just die, but you are now no longer who you are now. You are who you are as if you were in that reality. So, as an example, we'll use me. I'm Lehman. I'm here in my house, and another reality comes. And let's just say that it is a reality of fantasy, and it comes here. And if I'm an ordinary person with a little bit of possibility energy, then I can't go and get a gun and shoot a gun, because that gun does not work in a high fantasy world. They don't believe in high-tech firearms. It does not fit their reality. It doesn't care what physics says. It doesn't care what science says here. It just doesn't work. And that would be the same as like a Kevlar vest, bulletproof vest. They don't understand. It doesn't fit their reality. Doesn't care what you and your reality says. It doesn't work. So if I had one of those and I put those on and I got my gun and my possibility energy had been siphoned off and I go to shoot, it doesn't shoot. And if a guy with a sword comes and stabs me, it goes through me as if I'm not wearing anything, because what I'm trying to use doesn't work in that reality. It is nonsense. It would be the same as somebody here coming and going, abracadabra, and expecting a fireball to hit me. No, that's not going to happen in my, it's not going to happen. So it's the same thing. Now, there, it might happen. Here, it's not going to happen. So that reality comes, and if I'm just an ordinary person, I lose that possibility energy. Now, the bad thing that happens is, once that possibility energy has been soaked or siphoned from me and goes to the darkness device, goes to his High Lord that's connected to him, then if something like that happens again, I've lost that ability to adapt, to become the Lehman of Earth, to be the Lehman of this high fantasy realm. So if I'm a criminalist here, which I am, a fingerprint examiner, then I go to a fantasy realm. Well, they don't have criminalists, they don't have fingerprint examiners, but maybe I'm some type of even if I'm not a wizard, maybe I have devices that allow me to figure out things at a crime scene or something like that. So it's a Lehman, it's a Lehman fantasy wise, but it's not this Lehman, but it's me. But I've lost that. And now if I don't have that, and if somehow when they come in, they put stele down in a triangle pattern, and that anchors their reality, and it prevents a lot of the the realm being invaded has a bunch of possibility energy, and it prevents that from pushing back into the other realm. So it's kind of a spearhead or an anchor, and it's also a barrier that keeps the other realm from really coming in and destroying, having a real pushback. It stacks the odds in favor of the invading realm, not the invader, the invading realm, not the one that got invaded. And so if I go outside of that triangle area and I'm back in Earth reality, I've lost that ability, that possibility energy that was in me. I've lost that. My physical and metaphysical existence can no longer handle that. So if I go through that again and I get to a point where I would transform and maybe right back to criminal Lehman, I've lost that energy, so I just poof, I fade into what's known as what ifs. What if Lehman existed? It was if I never existed. I'm gone. It's not like I make a big explosion or bits of me everywhere. I just fade into nothingness, as if I never existed. People might kind of, hey, maybe I knew a guy named Lehman, maybe, but I can't really think of anything specific. Why am I even thinking of Lehman's a dumb name, that type of thing. And then after a few minutes, few days, you don't know unless you've written it down. So we have this thing where we have different realities coming, and what makes this setting so unique and what makes the able to be used with different genres, different realities, is because the Earth that's being invaded, that's known as Core Earth, is a very, very powerful Earth filled with more possibility energy than anyone could really imagine. So these High Lords with their darkness devices are used to taking their reality and going to another world and siphoning off the energy, and then depending on the High Lord, depending on their darkness device, their reality, what their philosophies are about life and everything, they might just suck it all dry and leave a husk of ash and dust and go to the next one and the next one and next one. Other ones who might be more, say, resource-ish or corporate type structured, they might go to one and they get as much possibility energy as they can from that world, but then they stop. And then they kind of just use that world as a resource. And they might do things to kind of give people hope and fill them up with possibilities again, but then they siphon it away. And they kind of do that method where it's kind of like a long drawn out, instead of just take it all, it's like just drag it out, drag it out, drag it out. And they might do that in various places. So you have different ways that different High Lords are doing things, just depending on how they work, how their mind works, and what they want. But none of them can go to Core Earth and do that, because Core Earth's possibilities are so much that the blowback, that their stele that they plant and they come in and they try to expand, it would not work as that buffer, that filter that it normally works with. There's so much possibilities on our Earth that it would blow back to that other cosm and destroy the other cosm. So the biggest, baddest, endest guy of the Torg Infiniverse, known as the Gaunt Man. And while I can't say he's on every single Cosmverse, because maybe there's Cosmverses that don't have the Gaunt Man, but on a lot of them, they're the Gaunt Man, and he in his Cosmverse is the biggest, baddest, evilest, endest, guyest. And he understood this, but he wanted it, because one of the things with Torg, and where Torg gets his name, is if a High Lord can get enough possibility energy, if he can fill himself, his darkness device, and get enough and build himself up and make himself powerful enough, he can become this being known as the Torg, which is kind of the equivalent of, say, the Nameless One or Apiros. And So, like, them being super powerful and having a darkness device, they're pretty on par with gods. And with this, they are even, way higher. So, like, they could beat some gods down here, but here they can destroy universes, they can destroy cosmverses. And the Gauntman wants this. All the High Lords want it, but the Gauntman is ancient. The Gauntman is super evil. The Gauntman has perfected how possibility energy works. He knows how to get the extract the most and have the least amount of what would it be when you sludge come off of it. Basically, he can refine it to provide him with the most energy without having anything kind of shaved off and fall. Like when you cut a piece of wood with a saw, you have sawdust. It's nothing. Well, he is minimizing the sawdust, type thing. So he's learned all of this, and he realizes that Earth has the possibility to make him Torg. And he realizes also that as powerful as he is, and as powerful as his darkness devices and his reality is, if he went in alone, he would lose. So in original Torg canon for the original game, official, the Gauntman discovered Earth at Passover when the Angel of Death was coming and killing the firstborn. That's when the Gauntman discovered Earth, and he was like, wow, this world has a lot of possibilities, and I can't do it on my own. He spent 2 millennia figuring out how he could do this, and he came up with he needed to bring in other High Lords. And High Lords usually don't work together. They're for the whole we're invading and we're taking, not the hey, we're working together, with at least one exception. And so he didn't just go, oh, what's out there, and I'm going to pick the biggest, baddest, meanest, kind of like me there. He picked ones that he thought would benefit him the most. So they weren't necessarily the closest to his power, because he wants the power. He wants to become Torg. He doesn't want somebody to beat him up. And we don't learn what other High Lords there might be out there, but I'm sure there are other High Lords out there. But he chooses 6 other High Lords to come with him. And they come on Earth at various times shortly, because if only one came and the other ones waited too long, then it would get blown back and Earth would destroy it. So it was kind of like Gauntman came, set down in Indonesia, and people in the world kind of didn't know what was going on, kind of like communication stopped from there. And then Barak Ka came down in the United States, and that stabilized, but Earth was starting to push back, and then other realms started coming into different places around the globe, and finally it was able to, Earth push back, was spread out amongst these different invading cosms, and core Earth lost the ability to destroy them. It's still very, very powerful. It's still core Earth, and the possibilities didn't all get just ripped right off of it. To kind of have a little point break, and then hopefully I'll remember what I was talking about now and continue. But Torg had a very distinct difference between Cosm and Realm. It's a little less so in Torg Eternity. But the home source is the Cosm. That is the home reality with the darkness device and the linked High Lord, the place they're coming from. And then when they set up the stele bounded areas on a new Cosm to bring their reality over, that stele bounded area is known as the realm. So they both operate under the same reality, they both have the same axioms and world laws, but the source is the Cosm, and the place that it is on the world, and the one we're talking about is core Earth, the place on Earth that it is the realm. So they come and they establish their realms. Now, one of the 6 other ones, so there were 7 on Earth, so one of them, both smarts of Earth people as well as underhanded dealings with one of the other invaders, cause that realm not to get blown back. Basically, the stalemate that they established that would have that buffer so Earth didn't just push back on it, were exposed, and they were ripped out. So when that reality came in, it had nothing to anchor it, and there was no buffer. So while there were other realms, the other realms were buffered. This one was not buffered, and core Earth possibility energy went back to it, blew up the bridge, hurt the cosm, but it didn't destroy it because the Earth was dealing with other cosms as well. But it kept them out of the game. Boom, they're no longer part of it. And the one realm that was the sneaky little realm that helped, they helped Russia get rid of that cosm, was Nippon Tech. And Nippon Tech also tried to do that and get rid of the cyber papacy, but the cyber papacy agents figured that out and killed the Nippon Tech agents, and they were able to come down. But Nippon Tech agents, or Nippon Tech as a reality, their laws and the way that their reality works is very, very close to Earth. So they were able to come kind of silently, and it wasn't a big thing. It wasn't like dinosaurs running around, or gothic horror going around, or high fantasy coming around, or Indiana Jones superpower people coming around. They were really close to us, and they were able to say, hey, we're just you. We're Earth people. You know, they didn't say we're Earth people, but they're just like, no invasion happened here, and we've spent our resources recently developing things a little more higher tech, so we can help out. We can, and that's how there was an insidious little undercurrent type thing of we're helping you. We're just corporations that have figured out stuff a little more advanced and helping out. So that's how they went in. So out of the 7 that came in, one of them was knocked out. So we have 6. One of them's hidden. So there were 5 obvious invaders. And in the next videos, I will be going through each of the different realities. So basically, that's kind of the overall how Torg lore works, how each game master's game table isn't just house rules. I mean, they're considered house rules if they're not official, but it is canon. Your house rules are canon because it exists in the Torg lore. The Torg lore specifically set it up that every game master has a place within it, and that is something that I just find it's baked into the setting. And while you can say, yeah, any game does this, this one's actually it's in here. You can read it with your own eyes. You don't have to infer anything, and it's not just a make up whatever rules you want. If you don't like the rules, don't do it. It basically is like, yeah, and here's the reasoning behind it. It gives you a in setting reason. Now, one of the things that I guess I'll go ahead, we're at 52 minutes, so this might take it up to 1 hour, and then I won't need to tack it on at the end, is I was talking about how, in my view, Torg is cinematic and not heroic. There are realms that are very anti-heroes. There are other realms that they are heroic, other realities, cosms, that if you go there, things are set up like there's one that I will get into, the Nile Empire. It is set up like comic books, good versus evil. There's very clear cut, white versus, white black. It's good, evil. There's no shades of gray anywhere, and it's kind of that. Also, comic book-ish, heroes win. So it's set up for the heroes to win. There's other genres, other realities that are set up the exact opposite, and the big bad one is Orosh. And if you go into it as Torg is a heroic game, and you get to Orosh, and you're thinking Torg is a heroic game, and you go trying to do things how you would do them heroic in other genres, you're gonna get your character killed, your group killed. It's not set up for a TPK. It's not set up to completely destroy a party, but the world there is fear. Fear takes possibility energy, and it does that refining to it. It makes it more powerful. It doesn't have as much, I don't want to use the word excess because that's kind of the opposite of what it is, but there's no crumbs left. There are very few of them. It doesn't leave behind remnants that could have been picked out, that just you're being sloppy and you used more ingredients than you needed. It takes everything that it can, and the fear even brings out more of it. So one thing of fear that humans have is a fear of death. So it's not going to kill everybody, because if it kills everybody, then there's nobody to be afraid. But if you kill enough in horrific ways, then those people that see it will continue on. They will tell others, and those other people will be afraid, and they will tell others, and those other people can be afraid. And when you have people that are actually heroes in the game, and you kill the heroes, that puts fear. If you have a group of 5 and your 5 hero dies, those were heroes to thousands and millions of people. Those thousands of millions of people now are very afraid because their heroes have died. Okay. They don't need to be killed. They have fear now. Now that possibility energy that does get siphoned from them is more. There's less little crumbs that are left over. Every little piece of that possibility energy is going towards the Gaunt Man, is the ruler of that. So if you go into Torg as a heroic system, you're gonna hit a brick wall if you go with that mentality, and definitely with Orosh, and even with a realm Tharkold, which is techno horror. It's more of body splat, or what is it? Splatterpunk, body horror type, Hellraiser meets Terminator after Judgment Day realm. So you have those realms that if you're just thinking Torg is heroic, you're gonna have a brain bust when you go to those. If you look at it as a cinematic, and even if I'm a hero, even if I'm a superhero, even if I'm Superman, if I go into the world of Dracula, not Dracula coming to the comic books, but me going to the world of Dracula, you're at a disadvantage because you're used to being Superman in a world that supports Superman. Now you go here, you have things that can defeat you, and it's not just kryptonite, because there's world laws that say I don't care if you're superpowered. My reality does not accept that you have superpowers. And now that I know your weakness, I can make kryptonite monsters or whatever. It's just one of those things. Basically, the main point I'm getting is, if you as a game master or player, or as a table, a group, look at Torg as being a heroic game, you're going to have to look at certain realms and see if you need to change things. And if you change things too much, how are they going to affect Torg as an experience? Because if you change things too much, then Orosh is no longer Gothic horror, it's DC Marvel horror, with superheroes type stuff. You're going to change things, and if you do fine, just realize what repercussions there might be. Will it become too easy? But these realms, they're different genres and they're different realities, and when you go into them, they do not care what you're from. They do not care what your expectations are. They've made their reality fit what they want, and that's what's going to happen. Some of them can help the heroes. Other ones are completely designed to heed and hamper and destroy heroes. So that's one of the things that I wanted to make clear, is that's why in my Cosmverse, and the way that I view things, is it's cinematic, but it's not heroic. You can be heroes and you can do heroic things. Even in those bad cosms, you can do heroic things. But the game is not heroic, because you might get hit with something that you can't deal with, especially if you go into it without a Victorian horror or a Terminator Judgment Day type mentality, and I got to work around this to use certain tropes and genre things for this over here, if you go into it working your reality, it's going to end bad. So I'll go ahead and I will stop this here. It's right at an hour. I thank you very much. I'm Lehman Crafton, Zorvalachan, Less Than Guru. The next time we will start will be with the first reality of original Torg, known as the Living Land. So I don't know when I will get that. It's Christmas Eve. As you see, I brought my Christmas tree upstairs from downstairs so I can have it in some videos. So if you celebrate Christmas, again, Merry Christmas. And until next time, see you later. Hello again at the end. Yes, it's not over, and I apologize. I forgot one of the most important things. I was going to just add this to the next video about the Living Land, but it really needs to be in this video, and that is the actual player characters. So, as I said, for the most people in the world, as soon as he hears me talking, he needs some attention. So he thinks, hey, you stopped, why are you started again? So as I was saying, an ordinary person has that little bit of possibility energy that gets siphoned away if they, if the High Lord with a darkness device comes and invades the realm. But during this time, the realities are hitting and clashing. There tends to be these things called reality storms that boil up, and they can make all types of weird things that make no sense whatsoever because the realities are fighting, and it's kind of like some, I don't know, trippy Alice in Wonderland things can be going on. And what happens is these, as I said, are called reality storms, and sometimes a person will have potential. They'll have potential to be more than just the ordinary person. And in Torg, ordinary people or regular people are known as ords. It's just a short term for ordinary. And the player characters are not ordinary. What happens is that when the realities clash, when they hit, the character will have what's known as a moment of crisis. And it's kind of the fight or flight reflex. And there's also kind of that part, which is the deer in headlight freeze reflex. And depending on what happens, if you have that potential and you have that moment of crisis, you might transcend. I say might. And here's going to be my example. Like I used that example of the high fantasy realm coming and hitting my house, and maybe I'm Lehman Criminalist, or maybe I'm Lehman that that criminal investigation, but uses like magic stuff instead of fingerprint powders and dye stains and super glue fumes and stuff like that. But there might be a point where I have a moment, or at that time, if I have a moment of crisis, if I have potential, depending on my actions, I could get and tap into my reality, and instead of just having a little bit of possibility energy, I could actually infuse myself with possibility energy. And that could be either with core Earth, with the Earth that I'm in, or it could be with the invaded reality. Like I said, I could go either way. And here's an example. Say I have my friend, he's here. Hi, I'm Lehman's friend. And this invading reality comes in, and something barges through my door downstairs and runs up the steps, and it's a huge ogre or orc or something. Something does not fit grasp my concept of reality. Even though I'm a role player and I understand what role playing is, I do not expect to see an actual orc that is a real orc, and not me looking at it going, oh, that's a pretty good cosplay. No, it's a real orc, and it has a real sword, and it is going to really kill me. So I might have a moment of crisis. I might have a deer in headlight freeze, and I just freeze and it kills me, well, then I'm dead and it doesn't mean anything, and it kills my friends. I might have a just flight and I take off, and I'm not thinking. All I'm doing is getting away. I'm not thinking, oh, this can't be real. I'm not thinking whatever. I'm not thinking. I run away. If I do that, I failed my moment of crisis. All I did was flee. All I did was let my base instincts take over and make me run away. Now, there are, in that moment of crisis, decisions that I might make. I might make a decision to run into my bedroom and grab my handgun and shoot the thing. Now, if I'm an Ord, I'm going to grab the handgun, I'm going to come out, and I'm going to pull the trigger. And if I'm in a pure zone, it's not going to work. It's going to nothing. I'm going to be an Ord. I probably have my possibility energy ripped out. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to say, what was I trying to do? I think this thing was called a gun, but I have no idea how it works. And I'm going to throw it at the orc or run away. If I make that moment of crisis and I fill myself up with the possibility energy, then it's actually going to fire. It's actually going to work. It's connected to me. I'm connected, still connected to core Earth. And I'm making a decision to defend myself, defend my friend, and I have transcended and become a stormer. And they're known as stormers because when two realities clash, they make these reality storms. And it's more of a correlation than a causation. But the High Lords derogatorily looked at these people that could fill themselves up with possibility energy, but they're still not anything worth what a High Lord. A High Lord could still have a bunch of people come and kill them. But they call them stormers. You're a stormer. You're created in this weird reality clash moment. So I could shoot the orc. Save myself, save my friend. I've made the decision. I didn't just run off. I didn't just freeze. I made a choice and became a stormer. Through a good way. Defending myself, defending my friend. Now, I could make another bad choice, which is seen in a lot of zombie movies, zombie TV shows, is I could push my friend towards the orc and then run away. So that's not just the animal instinct run away. It's not just a run away because that's what I think is a smart thing to do. I made a conscious decision to sacrifice my best friend. Why'd you do that? Made a conscious decision to push him towards the orc and run away. I fill up with possibility energy just as if I would have got the gun, bang, bang, bang. But I did it in a bad way. But I'm a stormer. Okay? That'll be brought up in a few minutes. The other alternative to becoming a stormer is I'm a role player, and this is what all of us role players, we would like to sit back and go, this is what would happen, and this is why I would go to the high fantasy world, is so that I could become a mage or a paladin or a cleric of whatever, and I could call down miracles. Most of us, we have to admit, would be Ords. The headlights, or the runaway without instinct. And until you're in that position, you can't say, oh no, I wouldn't do that. It's like, I once got robbed at gunpoint. And before that, it was only a theory of what I would do at that time. Now I know what I would do, and I was with friends and we all got robbed, and it was one of those things. And now I know what each one of my friends would do in that situation. But until then, you don't know. But to bring that into Torg, so the one, I'm thinking the way I think as a core Earth person, and I, run to my bedroom, I get a gun, I come out, and I shoot at the orc. Now, or I push my friend in the way. The other thing that might happen, and like I said, being a role player, we'd all like to think this is what would happen to us, but the probability that it would be this would be pretty slim, because just imagine the scenario. The orc is here, my friend is here, we were watching TV, my YouTube videos, hey look, I have the new YouTube video, and I look, and for some reason I think, oh, orcs are real. That means magic must be real. Abracadabra, boom, and I actually get off a fireball. Boom, hits the orc and kills him. Wow, I really connected with that high fantasy realm. I am now a wizard. I'm not Lehman the criminalist. Ord. I'm not Lehman the divining guy who can investigator from a high fantasy world Lehman. I'm not the Lehman who ran and got his gun and became a stormer. I'm Lehman who somehow twisted logic so messed up in his head that I instantly believed in magic and was able to cast a spell. I transform. Now I'm under that high fantasy reality. I'm still a stormer. I filled myself up with possibility. And my friend here, he might have had a moment of crisis too, or he might have just been an Ord. Why would I be an Ord? Why do you have to be the good guy? I don't know. It's just each person is different. Sometimes people will transform together. Sometimes one will become reality rated, and one won't become a stormer. And not, but it's just each individual circumstance and what your moment of crisis is might be different for different people. And sorry, car alarm, as you probably can hear, but I accepted that new reality and I transformed. So I am now fully in that other reality. If I went to my bedroom, I could go, oh, this is a gun because we have flintlock guns, but I have no idea how this works. I wouldn't know how to load the magazine because those don't exist. And even if it was already loaded, I wouldn't know how to turn the safety off. Even if the safety was off, because I would be an idiot and had everything loaded. Even if I knew to pull the trigger, the bullet itself is not a round bullet that you shove down through the muzzle. It is one that I'm going to have to pause this. That's just annoying. So sorry for that. That lasted about 5 more minutes later. It was getting to me, but at least I remember what I was talking about. I was talking about me trying to shoot a gun, even though I know what a firearm is. I am experienced with wheel lock, flintlock, matchlock, that type of thing, weapons, but I know it's a firearm. I know I'm supposed to point and shoot, but even if the cartridge is loaded, even if the magazine's loaded, even if the safety's off, all the weird things that I might not know about. And all I know is I need to pull the trigger. The cartridge itself, the reality, the science, the belief needed to say this works doesn't exist. So it still clicks. There's a chance actually that it will fire, but because of me, it's not part of my reality. It's not part of the fantasy reality that come down here and it's imposed itself over core Earth. I have a very big chance of it going click. Now, say my friend who he's an Ord, say he didn't go through a moment of crisis, he would have it would almost be certain that if he grabbed the gun and went to squeeze it, he would click. Me being a Storm Knight, being filled with possibility energy, I would have a better chance of not clicking, but it might just not work because I don't believe it and my reality doesn't believe it. The core Earth Lehman who filled up with possibility energy and ran and got the firearm and shot, he would have a very tiny chance of it clicking because of the Everlaw of One, which states that only one reality can exist in the same place, same time. So if the Everlaw of One, and when we use like anthropomorphic type thing, is if it notices, well, it doesn't notice it. It's just if certain circumstances are correctly, it comes in, it severs your tie from your reality, and now until you reconnect to that reality, then you abide by whatever reality you're in. So if I click, then I have to abide by that reality. So even if I'm core Earth and I understand TVs, I understand firearms, I understand all modern technology, it no longer works for me. I no longer understand it until I establish my connection with that reality again. Now, as the Isle person, I disconnect. Well, I can reestablish my connection with Isle pretty easily because it's the realm I'm from. It's just I shouldn't be going around shooting guns because I'll probably disconnect. Because even though I'm Isle, or I'm high fantasy, I'm in high fantasy, it doesn't accept the gun. So it's still going to go, boom, you shouldn't have did that. Get it right next time. And it might physically change that gun into a wheel-lock pistol. And now it's like, okay, now it's solved. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It fixed itself. So that's how the characters, the stormers that your PCs are filled with that possibility energy. They have that energy. They are able to manipulate reality a little bit more, a little bit easier. Certain things and the mechanics of the game bring that out, and when I go through the mechanics, that'll be part of it. But the thing is that PCs aren't called Stormers, they're called Storm Knights. The High Lords call anybody that does this, that keeps their reality or transforms, but fills themselves up with possibility energy while doing it, able to manipulate reality a little bit. They call them Stormers because they occurred during these reality storms most of the time. But one of the Stormers from the high fantasy realm, who was a knight, did not like the fact that this was a name that the High Lord, the evil people, gave people. And it didn't matter if they were good or if they were bad. It didn't matter if I defended my friend by shooting the orc or shooting the fireball at the orc, or if I betrayed my friend by shoving them in front of the orc, so then I could go get my firearm or run away or throw them in front of the orc and then cast my fireball. Selfishness. It didn't matter. Everybody was Stormers. This Stormer did not like it in the lore. And she decided to name the good Stormers, the ones who were opposing the High Lords, the one that did good things, who were self-sacrificing, who were altruistic, who were defending their friends, and not the ones who were pushing their friends towards the orcs, called them Storm Knights. They still come kind of from that storm type of thing, but they're knights. So you talk about Storm Knights, you talk about Stormers, or reality rated, because they could manipulate reality with possibility energy. So you have Stormers as a general term, or the bad term, Storm Knights, which are always the good Stormers, and then the Ords, which are the ordinary people that they might have that little bit of reality, but it might have been siphoned away. And then if they go further and get in the similar situation, they become what ifs, poofs. And speaking of that, I would stop it, but now I just remembered about the what ifs. See, everything keeps stacking and stacking and stacking on top of each other. So one of the things that Torg is a big storytelling game. It's about very cinematic. But storytelling, and I mean actual storytelling, like getting stories out there, is Storm Knights can make these great, wonderful things happen. And when you're in dramatic situations and you do something awesome, which is mechanically rolling really high, doing something awesome. And when you do that, then you do what's called a glory event. You do something that's glorious, and you tell stories about it. You have a person who is a face character who could be just really persuasive. They could be the official original Torg. The base for that storyteller was a rocker. He did his stories through, rock music. It could be a journalist. It could be a news broadcaster. If we're talking modern day, it could be a YouTuber, content provider. It could be anybody who inspires other people. And by doing that and getting the word out that these heroes, these Storm Knights, did this great feat, and they were able to do this great thing in against the evil invaders coming, it fills people up with that hope. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning. In Torg, no matter how you want to do philosophy yourself, is hope good or bad? And in Torg, hope is that thing that fills you with that possibility energy. So when you're able to spread that story seed, it was actually called a story seed. You spread that through your storytelling, and there's a skill in it called storytelling, and you can refill that stele zone by telling the people and getting that message across of that glorious deed, and you fill them up with that little bit of possibility energy that they're able to do. So then they can transform again without becoming what ifs. So then if they've converted to that, if they've converted to that high fantasy realm, and then you do a glorious event in that stele area and you talk about it and you get people's hopes up and they realize, oh wow, there's something new out there, there's something that can defeat this, then the Storm Knights can rip up that stele, collapse that triangle, and when Core Earth's reality comes back, it doesn't turn those people into what ifs. They have that ability, they have that little possibility energy that can then transform them back into a Core Earth person. So if I'm that ordinary person who was the criminalist, who then became kind of like an investigator that used magic devices. I wasn't a wizard or anything, I just had physical devices that I could use to do investigations with. And then I heard this story about this glorious deed that this awesome group of Storm Knights did, and it would fill me with hope and with possibility energy again. And then that stele was ripped up and Core Earth came back. Instead of just fading away into nothingness, I would become Lehman the Criminalist again. I would, boom, I'm Lehman, and I would have some vague dreamlike memory of being that high fantasy investigator with magic items instead of fingerprint powders and stuff, but it would allow me to transform. Again, it would not make me into a what if. So that's kind of the whole story structure of Torg. You're these Storm Knights who have this ability to manipulate possibility energy that the High Lords like to soak and change reality in big ways. You can't do it on those grand scale ways, but you can do little things with it. And you also then can defeat actions, plans, and lackeys of the High Lords, their agents. And by doing that, if you do it really well, that's a good story in a glorious way, you can plant those seeds in people's heads and you can give hope back to the populace. And when you do that, you fill them with possibility. You generate more possibility energy in them. You can rip up this stele because the people have that energy in them. And then when the new reality wash comes over, they can transform and not just poof out because they don't have that energy to withstand another transformation. So that's kind of the point. Torg isn't just find the big bad guy and end them, gain levels and get there. You have to defeat plans. You have to defeat agents of the High Lords. You want to try to do it in glorious ways. You then spend time telling your story, boasting, I did this. And depending on what realm you are, you might do it differently. If you're a Core Earth person now, I could be doing it on YouTube. If I was somebody in, say, Victorian horror, I could be doing it over telegraph or newsprint. I could be, a journalist. If I am from a primitive realm of cave people, then I could be doing it over campfires, and that spreads to other tribes, and it's oral, oral storytelling. And that's a cool concept that most games don't have. You might have a bard character, but their whole thing is just for personal spells and knowledge, not to influence the entire fabric of reality. And that's what the storytelling in original Torg did. Is it was the setup for how you defeated the High Lords. Just as the High Lords sent their agents to soften the populace, to kind of get them thinking, the false papacy came down and their technology is bad because they're going to come in with a realm that doesn't have technology. And if you've kind of even heard it, the more you hear something, the more you might accept it, or at least if it happens, you're like, okay, yeah, I've heard that 100 times. And it's that type of thing. You're convincing people and you are manipulating reality through it with the storytelling, with the glory story seed planted. you are actually generating, you know, that possibility energy was ripped off. It was ripped out of the ordinary people. It was siphoned off. It went away. It could be stored. It could be used depending on what the High Lord and the Darkness device wanted. It is gone. It's not like it just drained and there's no way that we fill it up ourselves. We're not like a solar powered, and the stories, the storytelling creates more possibility energy within us. It fills us, or gives us that bit again. It brings it back into it. It generates it. It alters reality. And that's going to be important when I talk about the new Torg Eternity thing. But I just wanted to get that. That's a cool concept. You went through those stages, so it wasn't just a rip up Staley. You rip up Staley, millions of people could become what ifs just because you didn't have time to tell your story. You didn't do a glorious deed. You just went for the rip it up and boom, and bad things happen. You turned millions of people into nothing, basically. It didn't even explode. They just faded away into nothingness. So, we are probably around total, if I add up everything, an hour to, hour 30, 2 hours, I don't know, very long. But hopefully the next ones will be shorter. So I do thank you very much for continuing this. It's just, this was something that when I stopped the recording, I was like, oh man, I completely forgot about PCs. I've completely forgot about player character Storm Knights. That is part of the setting. It's integral to the setting, that there's a reason. You're not just, you got experimented on and you're a superhero. You are, this happened, you had a moment of crisis. And for character background, you can come up with, this was my moment of crisis. This is the decision I had to make that turned me into a Storm Knight and not an Ord. And you can use that as game master and as a player. It's really awesome. So that should be hopefully the whole thing of Torg, original Torg setting. Generally, and we'll get into specifics with the different realities next time. But again, Zorval-chan, Less Than Guru, thank you. Like, dislike, subscribe, and I will see you next time.